Hey Donnie, what's going on? So, we need a game like now. Do you have any ideas? Didn't you hire a bunch of employees recently? We're pretty understaffed right now. We fired Sebastian, we didn't hire Dominic. Duncan's doing alright, but, he's kind of weird. You know what I mean? Well, I made this calculator test demo when I was on break. Nah, we can't release that. Wait, what about that Arc Hound game that you were working on? You sure you don't want to work on the calculator game? Hey, what's going on guys? This is Poacher coming at you with another video. So I covered the NES Contra games a couple weeks ago, but I missed one. Contra Force. So while we're talking about this game, let me ask you guys, the audience, a question. What is the rarest game you own in your collection? The reason I ask is because it just so happens that this particular game goes for over $100 on eBay and other sites. So this game came out late in the NES's library, released after Contra 3. So this game really isn't talked about all that much. We know about Contra, we know about Super C, but why not Contra Force? Not only do we, the audience, not talk about this game, but even the developers, Konami, they don't even acknowledge this game as an official Contra game. Why not? We're gonna try and find out, so let's get started. Before a game is completed and released, it will go through many stages of development. Sometimes ideas get scrapped, or graphical changes may happen, or bugs are found. An early version of any game really is going to be rough around the edges. When a prototype of Sonic 1 was found last year, quite a bit of content that was featured in this early build was removed from the final game. Sometimes the developers might think something's cool at first, but then they change their minds later on. Sometimes you have a game that's completed, but then ends up being used for something different than intended. There are a couple reasons for this. This can happen due to licensing reasons, for example. When Kemco brought their Mickey Mouse game over to the US from Japan, they renamed it Kid Klown and removed all references to Disney. Can you imagine that? A game that was developed with Mickey Mouse in mind ended up being used for a completely different purpose when it was re-released. And it worked! You would never know by playing this game that it used to be related to Mickey Mouse at one point. This is actually a really smart thing to do. They could have just not released it, but instead they recycled it, which meant the game could be presented to a brand new audience and Kemco could have made more money off it. Sometimes a game may be reskinned because the company needs to meet a certain demand in a small time frame. The most famous example is Nintendo. When the sequel to Super Mario Bros. Wasn't well fit for American audiences, Nintendo took a different game they made prior and recycled it to be a Mario game. If you want to know more about that, check out Gaming Historian's video on it. So as we can see, it's a common practice in the gaming industry for some games to be slightly altered to fit a certain demand. In the early 90s, Konami began working on a Famicom shooter called Arc Hound. Konami showcased this new game in some Japanese brochures. The pictures look pretty good, graphics are nice. We see a platformer stage and an overhead level, so it looks like there's some variety in this game. It honestly doesn't look bad, but unfortunately, this is all we get. For whatever reason, the game was cancelled and never received a Japanese release. The game ended up being shelved and the source code was held onto. While it seemed that Konami didn't find Japan to be the right market for this game, they thought otherwise for the US and decided to dust off the source code to Arc Hound. In September of 1992, the game was released in the US. However, it wasn't called Arc Hound. It was called something else. In a previous episode, I talked about Contra and Super C, and I praised both games. It's worth mentioning that, outside of the levels and bosses changing, Super C was not that much different from Contra. The two games used the exact same engine, and the characters looked exactly the same, and the weapons, besides the fire gun, all act the same. They hardly changed anything, and you know what? That's perfectly fine. It didn't need to. The first game was already near perfect. Why change it? Don't fix what ain't broke. But as a surprise to me, Konami ended up releasing Arc Hound in the US as Contra Force. This game does not use the same engine as Contra, nor does it even look like Contra, but let's give this an honest chance. I'll be fair, it does have some similarities to Contra. It's a run and gun platformer. You get weapon upgrades, the controls are nice, you can aim your gun in multiple directions just like Contra. The overhead stages remind me of Super C. The overall art style of this game is much different from Contra. Everything is so colorful and cartoony looking. You can also pick between 4 characters. In fact, it's actually very similar to Contra Hardcore, where each character has its own set of weapons. You can even switch characters on the fly. You couldn't do that in Hardcore. The way you upgrade your weapon is much different. In actual Contra games, the weapon is indicated by letter. S is the spread gun, L is laser, F is flame. But in this game, upgrades are just generic looking suitcases. What do they even do? Well, you see this meter right here? Each suitcase you collect will advance the cursor once to the right, and then you can collect your desired upgrade. So obviously, the upgrades that are farther to the right are going to require more suitcases. The weapon system actually has more in common with Gradius than it does Contra. And you know what, I actually like this idea, but I'm going to explain later why it doesn't work for this game. The characters are all specialized in certain areas. For example, Beans is a demolition expert and he has all the bomb weapons. The fact that each character has their own weapons in this game gives it a lot of variety. Speaking of variety, the overhead stages are a nice change of pace. So there's definitely some cool stuff here, no doubt. The controls are nice, the ability to switch characters is very innovative, the graphics are colorful, there's a good amount of variety here. So what's the problem? The first thing you'll notice right away is the insane slowdown when there's more than one enemy on screen. You're gonna face this problem many times in the game. What happened? Contra never had this problem. I've seen many NES games with tons of sprites and activity on screen. I don't think this is a matter of limitations. I think this is bad programming. The NES can do better than this. The Gradius style power-up system, like I mentioned before, is really cool, but it just doesn't work for this game. It takes a long time to build up your character, especially because some items are more expensive than others, and when you die, you lose all of your upgrades and you have to start from scratch again. Considering how difficult this game is, it's near impossible to build up your character. Gradius is the same way. In that game, you lose all your upgrades when you die, just like Contra Force, but Gradius has a force field or barrier upgrade that allows you to take a few hits before your ship dies. The barrier upgrade allows you to stay alive longer so you can continue building up your ship, but Contra Force just doesn't have a barrier upgrade, so you die in one hit, no matter what. One thing that's nice about Contra Force though, you can respawn suitcases by walking back and forth. I mean, it's not fun, but at least that's an option. The bosses in this game are just really lousy. In Contra, the first stage boss is this big machine that you have to shoot down. As a kid, I called it the refrigerator boss. Really cool first stage boss. In Super C, the first stage boss is a helicopter ambush. Again, really cool. So what's the first stage boss in Contra Force? You literally fight a human being. This is the best they could come up with? When you compare this to any other Contra game, this is lame. Alright, so we're gonna talk about a really ridiculous glitch that makes me wonder, like, if they even tested this game. If you keep pausing the game over and over again, you can jump in the air indefinitely. You can literally fly in this game. Like what happened? This feels more like a prototype than a final game. Some stages that would otherwise be difficult are a breeze because look at this, you can literally fly. What? Alright, let's get back on track now. The weapon upgrades are pretty cool, but some of them are kinda lame. I'm not a big fan of Bean and his demolition weapons. I want to shoot people, not wait for things to explode. Some of the other weapons are fine, but there's a lack of classic Contra weapons, like the spread gun. Wait, what? How do you have a Contra game without the spread gun? So let's talk about the controls. For the most part, they got it right, but it's only like a 90% resemblance to Contra. For starters, it feels like you're playing in slow motion because of the lag. Not only that, but there's a couple directions you cannot aim in. The game doesn't allow you to shoot diagonally downwards if you're on the ground, so that leaves you with a blind spot where you can't shoot. This may not seem like a big deal, but this is a game that has the Contra logo on it. It's supposed to meet a certain criteria, and they definitely messed it up here in the controls department. They almost got it right, but not quite. So like I said, Contra has a few things going for it. The controls are very close to Contra. The Gradius style power-up system is really cool. The graphics, nice and colorful, and there's some variety in this game. In a lot of ways, this game does have that Konami feel, but the extreme slowdown, the one-hit deaths, the mediocre bosses, lack of classic Contra weapons, and lack of playtesting make this a really lousy game that does not live up to the Contra name. If they kept it under Arc Hound, fixed the slowdown issue, patched up that ridiculous infinite jump glitch, I think this would have been a decent game. So real quick, I wanted to talk about Contra 4 on the DS. This game could be classified as a remake since a lot of the stages are from classic Contra games. All the weapons come from previous games, and if you collect the same weapon twice, you get a super version of that weapon. The controls are perfect, it feels just like Contra. You have this new grappling hook that you can latch onto things with, it's a pretty cool feature. The developers, WayForward Technologies, played it safe with this game. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel here or introduce any weird changes. They basically just took Contra, made some new stages, added a couple tiny new features, and that's it. That's perfectly fine with me. This game is great, and I'm glad WayForward Technologies played it safe here. I mention this game because if you select bonus content in the menu and then hit Museum, you get a nice little history of the Contra games. To my surprise, Contra Force gets a mention. What I find interesting is that apparently, this game is not part of the official series timeline. What does that mean? Well, according to Konami, this game doesn't exist. To my knowledge, there's no information on why Konami doesn't count this game, but if I were to speculate, I think it's pretty obvious. For one, this game isn't Contra anyway, it just has the logo. There might be some similarities, but it's just too different to call it a Contra game. Secondly, it just doesn't meet the criteria for a good game. Too many problems. So to conclude, it was common for game developers to slightly alter a game in order to fit a certain demand. When Konami's prototype Arc Hound got shelved, they released it under the name Contra Force later on, despite Arc Hound originally having no relation to the Contra franchise. While Contra Force does have some things going for it, the constant slowdowns and overall poor gameplay make this a mediocre game. These reasons might be why Konami doesn't count this game in the series timeline. So thanks so much for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like rating. That alone helps the video get noticed by more people. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel so you're automatically updated when my next video is out. More content is coming. I recently hit 1,000 subscribers. Thanks so much to all my friends and fans for making this possible. Let's aim for 10K. Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Poger coming at you with another... I was about to say another system? That was kind of stupid. But I missed one. No. Let's try that again. So, a couple weeks ago, maybe you've heard of this, maybe not. I don't understand the angle yet, so this might be way off screen. So I covered the NES Contra games a couple weeks ago, and now this one isn't really talked about all that much. What is the rarest game you own in your collection? So anyway, this game came out very late in the NES's time span, even after... So this game came out very late in the NES's lifespan, way after... No, not way after. It was not way after. Don't listen to me. So this game came out... I just can't do this. So this game came out well after... After what? I will get this, okay? I will get this. Konami doesn't even acknowledge this game officially as part of a Contra... As what? What am I talking about? We're gonna... Nope. Hey, so Donnie, we need a game like fast. No. Hey, what's up, Donnie? So, honest... No. No. Well, we're pretty understaffed right now. We fired Dominic. No, we didn't fire Dominic. No, we didn't. We just didn't hire him. No, no. Wait, what about that Arc Hound game that you were working on? Why don't we just... No. Well, I made that calculator test demo that I... No, not yet. That was an insane amount of outtakes. One of the worst I've ever done.